When you are buying a house in Nova Scotia, there is one thing that surprises nearly everybody. It's a fee that no one is accounting for, and it could be much, much bigger than you expect. So, with me, joined as always, I have Alex Lavender, a certified mortgage broker right here in Halifax. And Alex, what is this hidden fee that comes up every single time that somebody buys a house?
Well, it's a tax. A lot of people don't realize when they're purchasing a home that there's a tax involved with buying a home. Just like buying a used car, they're buying anything in the grocery store. A lot of the times, there's tax involved, and it's a big number because houses are big values. So, here in Nova Scotia, in most municipalities, that deed transfer tax works out to be about 1.5% of the purchase price. So, if the home's $500,000, that's going to be $7,500, and it can come to a surprise. It come as a surprise for a lot of people too, especially if you worked hard to save up that 5% down payment. You have to come up with 5% down on 500,000 is $25,000. Coming up with another $7,500 plus additional costs can be a lot of money.
So that can really expand your actual closing costs that a lot of people are not expecting. So is it always 1.5%? Is that a way that people can budget for buying a home in Nova Scotia? Is, hey, I'm just going to take 1.5% of the purchase price and just know I have to come up with that much cash on top of my down payment. Is that as easy as it is?
That would be the best thing to do. I would say probably 80, 90% of the scenarios are going to have 1.5% deed transfer tax as a standard tax. There are other municipalities out there that may have a lower or higher deed transfer tax, but I would say probably 90% of them are at that 1.5% tax rate. So I would budget for that for sure.
And as a mortgage broker yourself, is this a fee that someone can just like roll into their mortgage? That way they don't need to pay it all at once and they can just have it as their mortgage payments?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. A lot of the times people come in and just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to roll that into the mortgage, or I'm going to have the seller cover that. And that's not the case. It's one of those things that you do have to pay out of pocket. And just like a down payment verification, a lot of the times lenders will want to see that you have that money in savings as well, in addition to your down payment, to ensure that you're not like borrowing it from other resources as well.
Ah, I see. That's yeah, that's definitely something that can really surprise people then.
For sure.
And
It does.
the property transfer tax in Nova Scotia, it can be larger than 1.5%. As a matter of fact, it can be 10%. And Alex, could you please explain who is going to be paying 10% property tax on top of their down payment when they're buying a home in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, we also have like a out of province or non-resident deed transfer tax that's currently in effect as well. Not sure how long it's going to be in effect. Previously, it was a little bit lower than this. I believe it was 5% for a couple of years. But currently, as of today, there is a 10% non-resident deed transfer tax.
Wow.
There are some ways maybe around that as well. I think one of them is if you're coming to the province and you're going to be living here within the next 6 months, then they'll waive that. But if you're trying to buy an investment property here or a second home or a cottage, that's what we see a lot of. It's a surprise, and you know what? We've seen people not proceed with an offer because of that. And another big thing too, actually, another scenario that we see quite often is parents co-signing for their children going to school here. So maybe their child is going to go to whatever university, let's say Dalhousie, and they want to buy a condo for them, maybe some friends, so that they don't have to rent. Um, they're shocked to find out that if they are in a different province buying this home for their children, that they are subject to this tax as well. And sometimes it may not be the whole 100% of the property value. In some scenarios, it could be. We've seen where parents are buying a home for their children and the kids aren't going to be on it at all. It's just going to be the parents, and they live in Ontario, for example. Then it's subject to the full 10% deed transfer tax. If they're co-signing with their kids and it's 50-50 ownership, then, maybe only 50% of well, it starts to go a little more complicated, but only half of the tax is applicable at 10% and the other half is applicable at 1.5. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge property tax that someone's going to have to pay 10%. So if you buy a $500,000 home, that's an extra $50,000 bill you have coming if you're not living or going to move to Nova Scotia. And so can you explain the difference, Alex, between this, property transfer tax versus like the taxes you pay annually on your house? Is there a difference? Does this cover your annual property taxes too?
No, there's a difference. I mean, it's tax and tax on tax on tax, right? So the deed transfer tax is just the acquisition of the home. So it's just purchasing the home is this deed transfer tax. After that, you have your ongoing annual property taxes as well that you have to pay every year, or here in Halifax, every 6 months, the tax bill comes out. So that's an ongoing tax, whereas the deed transfer tax is that initial purchasing the home tax.
Okay, got it. And you mentioned that there is a way to get an exemption from this tax. So if you are moving to the province, you do not have to pay the 10%, but do you still have to pay the 1.5%? And then who else gets an exemption? Does first-time homebuyers get an exemption as an example?
So for the 1.5% deed transfer tax, the standard deed transfer tax, there's no way around that I'm aware of. At least let's just talk like residentially speaking, buying a home. We're not getting into commercial or anything else. But residentially speaking, 1.5%, there's really no way around that. Not that I'm aware of, unless maybe you're the prime minister. I'm not sure. For the 10% out of province, I really don't think there's many ways to get around that as well if you're not moving to the province within that 6 month period. We've seen different ownership structures maybe where if a parent and child are going into it together, maybe the child owns 99% of the property and the parent owns 1%. However, these are things that are structured by a lawyer, so it'd be a little bit out of my domain to say what can and can't be done. But yeah, if you're looking for strategies around this, that would definitely be a good conversation to have with a lawyer, because a real estate lawyer is the one who administers this tax program.
Yeah. So if you're moving from Ontario to Nova Scotia, or let's say you have a child from Ontario who's going to school in Nova Scotia and you want to buy them a place in Halifax or anywhere in Nova Scotia, is there a way for the parents to basically say, hey, we want to be responsible for the mortgage, but we want to avoid this 10% property transfer tax? So we're just going to have our student, our child's name on the actual deed, and then both the parents and the student be on the mortgage. Is that something that you've seen? Is that something that's possible?
It's a great question, Mark. It starts to get a little complicated. So like what it is that would be like a guarantorship situation. So like the child would own the property and would go on the title of the property, and the parents would co-sign the mortgage as guarantors, but they wouldn't actually be on the property or on the deed itself. A lot of the times a lender will not do that because the income is coming fully from the parents. A lot of the times those students don't have any income. So, and typically limited credit. We're talking people that are, younger age as well, right? So a lot of the times all the strength is on the parents. And I mean, it'd be really case by case, maybe, with a larger down payment or certain scenarios, it might work out, but I'd say it's probably a hard thing to get approved, but it is a structure that does exist.
And if that's a situation you're in, then that just honestly paints the picture why it's so important when dealing with mortgages and like your money to work with qualified mortgage brokers like yourself, Alex, and to work with like lawyers that are actually good as well, that I know you have many connections for and can recommend. So if you are trying to buy a property in Nova Scotia and you're trying to avoid this 10% property transfer tax, and make sure that you're set up structurally around it, please reach out to Alex. Use the link down below this video. And if you have any questions on this, let us know in the comments on this video, and subscribe to Alex Lavender on YouTube for more helpful content on mortgages and living in Nova Scotia like this one.